Hello BookTube. So a couple of weeks ago, Sean the Book Maniac tagged me in the Read Your Country tag. And in the beginning I was like, yeah, I'm a newbie and someone's tagged me. And then I read the questions and I went, oh hell. And I went, oh hell, for a couple of reasons. The first one is that I am South African. And I am not very proud to be a South African. There is no way that anybody can look back at the history of this country and be proud. In fact, one looks back at the history of this country and goes, how the hell could somebody have made so many stupid decisions and think that it would turn out all right in the end? I mean, yeah, so, not very proud to be South African. First problem. Second problem. You see that? There's 2 more bookcases over there. I have boxes under my bed. I have over 1,000 books in this room, and this, and fire, this is the grand total of books that I have by South Africans, and I haven't even read them all. In fact, I haven't read many of them, so that's the second problem. The other problem is that, well, the third one, is that South African authors have kind of put me off of South African books. Case in point, Disgrace by JM Coetzee. Now, I suppose I should just give you a brief idea about this. So he's a professor who was disgraced and dismissed from his post for having sexual relations with a student who he coerced into a relationship. Disgrace. He then goes through to a farm just outside of Grahamstown where his daughter is raped. A disgrace. Some people might consider the fact that she chooses to keep the child a disgrace. And then he ends up working for the animal welfare, where every week they put down hundreds of dogs. A disgrace. So, yeah, I can see the concepts, I can see the violence, I can see the theme of disgrace running throughout it. It does not make it pleasant reading though. So, yeah, South African books tend to be very heavy and not very enjoyable. So I've tended over the years to avoid. But I haven't avoided completely, so I'm going to give this my best shot. And if nothing else, I think this could be an educational video and experience for myself, and possibly for you, if you are interested in reading some diverse South African fiction. That's when we get to the want to read list, by the way. So it starts off with the first question. Okay, well, the first question is, what country are you talking about? I think we've established that. This is South Africa today. Number 2, what is your favorite childhood book from your own country? If you don't have a favorite, name a popular children's book. Right, so when I was a kid and we had to read an Afrikaans book for school, I used to read Trompie in die Boksombende by Topsy Smith. Trompie basically was a kid who had a gang of friends and they had a fort out somewhere in the veld and they used to just get up to mischief. It was fun, it was pleasant, and if you consider how butt ugly that cover is, you might appreciate how good the stories were that I did it more than once. I think they were really trying to hit home the idea that you could not judge a book by its cover. Maybe it was an educational choice, because it's either that or they hadn't learnt about cover design at that point in time. Other than that, kids' books around here tend to be written for school. So that would be an example like this, where you can see the thing is designed basically to cover the grade 8 or 9 curriculum. And it's not a bad story, but there's just so much better that's out there. This was just a meh read. There's no words for it, it's just like meh. But there is one that is quite popular and actually has a little bit of international acclaim to it, especially since YouTube sensation Troye Sivan actually got the starring role in this in the movie version, and that is Spud by John van der Ruyt. Now, okay, that is not Troy Sivan, just in case you're wondering. I got this long before the movie came out. Anyway, Spuddy, everybody in South Africa has nicknames. Well, most people have nicknames. So Spuddy goes off to school, and well, he gets a scholarship, actually, a bursary, to go to a very posh boarding school in Athol. It's Michael House, in case you're wondering. I don't know if they actually stated in the books, but if you live here, you know. And yeah, it's just his school life. And what I enjoyed with the Spud books is that he and I are actually approximately the same age, because when Spuddy goes to school, there he's in the 9th year, so yeah. Usually we start high school in the 8th, but anyway, he goes off to high school, and this is when Nelson Mandela is being released and apartheid is coming to an end, and you know, Nelson Mandela is voted in, and you've got Clive Rice and playing cricket, and it was the first time we ever played international sport because the boycotts were then over. And he and I were the same age, because I was in my 11th or 12th year at school when all of that was going down. So I enjoyed reading that from my perspective, because looking back on things and the feelings and whatnot at the time. So I'd recommend Spuddy. There's 4 books in the series. I should have actually known that, grade 9, 10, 11, 12. There are 4 books in the series. But this one is definitely the best. Bring your tissues. That's going to be a theme for this video. Bring your tissues. Then it says, what is a book from your country that you read at school? What I read at school from my country was none. Unless we're counting Afrikaans short stories, when we had to do Afrikaans. And they were dreadful. Can't remember who they were written by. But the theme in that was the dog died. It was a common trend. Also keep in mind that it was very, very unlikely that the government was going to be giving us any South African fiction to read, because, well, let's put it this way, they banned Black Beauty because of the title. God help them if they actually read something that had anything controversial in it. So yeah, we grew up on Britlit. But nowadays, okay, well, at university I did books like JM Coetzee's Foe, Athol Fugard's Busman and Lena. This one's actually set in my hometown, at Berry's Corner. I actually dated a bloke who worked near Berry's Corner, although I probably shouldn't be putting that on anything that's going to be permanent, because, you know, young, stupid, allowed to make mistakes. But anyway, nowadays at school, in the 11th grade, they are doing Tsotsi, also by Athol Fugard. Athol Fugard lives in my hometown too. He's about 5 kilometers that way. Yeah, never met the guy, but yeah, he lives here apparently. And Tsotsi is about a black guy who was this was going about 50s, 60s, if memory serves me right, and he is raised in a township that is being slowly demolished. They're going to build Triumph, in case you didn't catch, the suburb Triumph there on this land, and they're slowly but surely demolishing this township. And Tsotsi means thug or gangster, and he really is. And in this story, it's very short. You follow him on a bit of a redemption trail. It's up to you to decide whether he truly is redeemed or not, because let's face it, he dies before he really gets challenged. Oh, spoiler, sorry. But anyway, yeah, it's a very interesting story, because although one can be very critical on the stereotypes with regards to black people in these poor conditions, it also makes one realize that his condition was as a result of apartheid, and it shows you what life was like for these people, and it was not fun. It really was not fun. So that's school books done for South Africa. Then it says, what is a book set in your favorite area of your country? Okay, so I'm going to cheat. I'm going to be plainly, bluntly honest, and I am going to cheat. Because this is a myth, but it's a popular myth. I have heard this myth for about 20 years now. So I'm going to go with this. I did say it was a myth, right? Remember that. So the first thing is that Tolkien actually was born in South Africa. Okay, he was born in Bloemfontein, in the Free State, otherwise known as Die Vrystaat. So I'm kind of iffy allowed, right? Anyway, so the myth has it that The Shire where the hobbits live was based on a place in South Africa called Hogsback. There are three stories as to how this could have come about. The first was that he went to Hogsback and saw it and then based the Shire on it. The second one is that his nanny went there and then told him stories about it. And the third one is that his son visited when he was already in England and wrote him letters describing the place. It's all a myth, but it's a beautiful place. If you ever come to South Africa and come and visit, and you have reasonably good fitness levels, I would strongly advise going to Hogsback. It is absolutely beautiful, but to get to the parts where you really can appreciate the nature, you need to be a bit fit. So quit smoking now and get that treadmill out, give it a good run. Other than that, there are quite a few books that are set in Cape Town, and that is probably South Africa's #1 tourist destination. Although, if you don't like people, avoid that one. Oh, and if you like to flush the toilet, avoid that one too right now, because Cape Town and where we are, there's no water left. Our dams are down to 29%, and as they said, the last 10%, they can't use it, sludge. So heaven only knows what is going to happen here if it doesn't bloody rain. Anyway, moving on. So it says here, what is a historical fiction book set in your country? So I've actually got two, but the second one I'm going to save for my favorite book, because that one is my favorite book. But I'm going to go with Wilbur Smith. This is another author you've probably heard of, and yeah, he's also South African. This one is one of the Courtenay novels. There's quite a few books that follow the Courtenay family and the development of South Africa. And if memory serves me right, because we're going back to my high school years here, in this one they are building the castle in Cape Town, and by that I don't mean something like Buckingham Palace. That's more like a military thing. But they're building the castle, and if memory serves me right, they find Knysna as well. Ooh, another good tourist destination, especially if you have a time machine. Go back 30 years. Go visit Knysna then. Glorious. Now it's just tourists. Too busy, too touristy, too expensive because it's touristy. And the exchange rate makes everybody think, hey, this is cheap, and we're going, dude, so much money. But anyway, I can't remember what my opinion on these series, on this was. I know I read more than one, but yeah, they weren't bad. I mean, he's popular for a reason, I suppose. But yeah. Anyway, what is a book by an Indigenous author from your country? I hate to admit it. In fact, I'm very embarrassed to admit it. More embarrassed than I was about 6 or 7 years ago when having a conversation with friends and whatnot, and it came up about Wuthering Heights, and I actually went, I haven't read that one. But you know, that was easy to fix, because Wuthering Heights you can find a copy of anywhere. Absolutely anywhere. Any bookshop, second-hand bookshop, you'll find Wuthering Heights on a shelf. But South African Indigenous authors? I have no idea. So I went to fix this. I know a lady who works at NELM, which is the National English Literary Museum. It's in Grahamstown. And I said to her, help. And so she sent me this. Okay? The reason why it's in 5 paragraphs is not because there's 5 authors. It's because it was in chat and I copied and pasted when she ran out of words to use. So I got a lot of ideas from her from this, and there are 5, we'll count afterwards, authors that I'm really interested in. So she said the most popular with high stature are Zakes Mda and Sindiwe Magona. So I'm going to look for those because they're contemporary authors. And then she mentions 3 classics which actually go in for the next part. And so we're going to include this as both, although I'm going to add to the classics just now. So she told me about the novel Chaka, which is the only book on this list that I've actually heard of. I've never seen it in a shop, but I have heard of it. And that was by Thomas Mofolo. And apparently he was the first published black writer in South Africa. And it was published first in Sesotho. It was translated into English later. And then there's T Plaattje's Mhudi, and then the one that I'm also really interested in, it's by Miriam Tlali, and it's called Muriel at Metropolitan. And apparently this was the first novel by a black South African woman, and it was published in the 1970s. So that was like height of apartheid. So I'm really, really interested in finding that. And then she's given me lists, because this is lists, okay? Lists of authors. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to keep this in my bag, in my list of books that I'm looking for. And I'm going to be seeing how many of these authors that I can find. I'm concerned about what pricing is going to be like, because, yeah, Tafelberg publishers know that there is no competition, so the price is through the roof. It's ridiculous. It is cheaper to get books that actually traveled here than books that were here to start off with. But, yeah, so I like the fact actually that this has given me some direction in which to focus my reading for a while, so that's pretty good. But to continue then with the second part, which is now question 7, a classic book from your country. There's two that I've got. I haven't read them yet. So we've got Cry the Beloved Country by Alan Paton. I've done a lot of his poetry, but I've never actually read this. And then The Story of an African Farm by Olive Schreiner, which I also found not so long ago. This one's actually very good, Nick. I don't think anybody read it when they flogged it off at the second-hand bookshop. So I'm looking forward to reading that. Olive Schreiner, I was actually in Res in Olive Schreiner, I think. It might have been Lillian Britain. Anyway. And then there are other books that I've... Oh, let me stop staring down at my stomach and move this list higher up. So I've got others down here. There are 2 Afrikaans classics that I've never read. They're by Daleen Mathieu, and it's Kring in die Bos and Phyllis se Kind. I don't know if Kring in die Bos has been translated, because that would be Circles in the Bush, and that would be just a very, very strange title. But Phyllis se Kind, Phyllis Child, that one I know has been translated into English, and I should really actually, make a plan and go read them. And then it says, what is a book from your country that you haven't read but would like to read? So there's 2 that I don't have here, and the first one is Long Walk to Freedom by Nelson Mandela. That book currently costs 7% of my salary, so it's going to be staying where it is. But maybe when I get another job, I will pop that one on the shelf. And then Trevor Noah's Born a Crime, because it's Trevor Noah, and yeah, I've heard so many good things about it. I really would like to, and I'd like to support him too. He is a fabulous bloke. So those are the 2 that I don't have that I would like to get. And then I've went to go about fixing my lack of South African books and knowledge. So I was just looking, man, it's like, have you got South African authors here? So we found Our Fathers by Karin Brynard. This has apparently been translated from Afrikaans. Apparently it's South African crime. Could be bad, could be interesting. We'll see how it goes. And then, oh God, save me on this one. Andre Brink. Before I forget, Andre Brink was my first ever encounter with postmodernism at university. It was something to do with a baobab tree, and it was a tiny novella vignette. It was tiny, it really was tiny. And it was the first time I ever thought that studying on hallucinogenics might actually be the way to figure something out, because I thought that each sentence was beautifully constructed, but altogether, not too sure about how much sense it made. But anyway, I found this one the other day, and it was going real cheap. It was going for $10. And I thought, oh, what the hell, $10, I'll give it a try. And then on Goodreads, I find out that there's erotic scenes in here. I don't know. We will find out. I will read it. Even if I read it fast, I will read it. So those are 2 that I have that I'd like to read. And, then this one as well. Okay, so this is about Mmusi Maimane. It's called Prophet or Puppet, and it's by, what was his name again? Tembiso Msomi, and he is a political journalist. He is the deputy editor at the Sunday Times. And in case you don't know, or if you're interested, Mmusi Maimane is the head of the opposition party to the ANC, who's currently leading South Africa. And I'm curious to see what he has to say about him, because, part of civil responsibility is to choose wisely. And then it says, last part, Number 9, what are some of your favorite authors or books from your country? So, once again, we need to loosely consider this as favorite because we haven't really read that many, right? So, the first one that I'm going to go for is Black Dog Summer by Miranda Sherry. And this one is a post-apartheid book. In fact, it's a contemporary novel. Let's just put it out there. It's a contemporary novel. And this one is actually, it does a very good job of showing how South Africa is slowly but surely merging. It shows the realism of the issues that we have with crime. It basically starts off with a mass murder. It's not quite on a farm, but it's on a small holding. And just like The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold, this is narrated basically by the mom who has passed away right at the beginning of the book as she sees what's happening. And but yeah, what I liked with this is that you've got the posh white family with the Sangoma living next door, and the Sangoma, you know, her husband has a fancy car and he's got a fancy job. It's not the old-fashioned ideas of mud huts and, you know, throwing the bones and, you know. So I like this. It was a refreshing view of South Africa, and although it had the realism of all the negative that is still happening, it also kind of left me with a bit of a positive feel. And there was one passage here that I want to read because I thought it was just beautifully written. So you've got the girl who's been horrifically traumatized by what happened at the beginning, and she's heading off to school for the first time since this incident. It's a new school, and here in South Africa you have school uniforms, and she's thinking how she would describe this to a friend. So she says here, "The girls looked like a herd of impalas," she silently explains, "all brown coats and slender ankles with long hair to flick instead of tails. They know that I am not one of the herd and look at me with little sideways movements of their eyes, like my coat is not quite the right brown, or my ponytail is tied up wrong. Maybe they think I'm a jackal in disguise or something. Up close, they stink of 10 different kinds of deodorant and shampoo and sweat, all mixed into a horrible stew." But I really like that. That part stood out. I mean, you can see I put a tab in it. But yeah, I quite enjoyed that. And then we get to this is a genuine favorite because this is one of my top 10 books, well, maybe top 10 books of all time, and that is The Power of One by Bryce Courtenay. And let's face it, the only reason why Bryce Courtenay is now considered Australian is because of the stupid apartheid government, because he was born and bred, and this is based here. This was the first book he wrote. And I have read this book so many times. This book has got such charm, but it's got such cruelty. It's got genuine love, and I'm not talking romance. I'm talking about genuine love between two people, completely platonic, but where they would do anything for each other. And yet it's got horror, and it's got hatred, and it's everything. This is a cooking pot of emotion, and I just absolutely loved it. From chapter 14, it does kind of a little bit, in my opinion, but that's only my older me opinion, not my younger me opinion. My younger me just devoured this. I'd finish it and then just start it again, which is why it's in a bit of a mess, although the spine, as you can see, is still very good. Yeah, one day when I get around to doing the guilty book tag, I will tell you a story about this book. But anyway, so yeah, that was me with the Read My Country tag. And as we can see, I have barely read my country. But at least what I've got out of this tag is knowledge that there is something that I need to work on. I mean, I've always been aware of the diversity of my reading. For at least 4 years, I've been keeping track of the fact that I'm not just reading white authors, that at least 10% of my reading is non-white authors, and I thought I was doing a really good job. And then this tag came along. But besides being enlightening for me and actually making me head off and go and find a way to go and fix this, maybe it's given you some ideas, and throughout the time that I'm going to spend on this channel in the future, I will slowly but surely hopefully cover some of these books as I manage to find them. I don't know if it's going to be easy to find them. I have never seen them on shelves, and when I've asked at bookshops for South African authors, which I have done in the past actually, I have never got them. In fact, I tend to get books like this is for my wrap-up, which is set in South Africa, but he's Scottish. So, but anyway, thanks for watching. I'm hoping that the next time I have a video there will be a lot less apology and a lot more books. Bye for now.